Well, let's give you a bit more detail on this United States-EU gas supply deal. This agreement will see the United States supply 15 billion cubic meters of liquefied natural gas to Europe this year to help Europe's pledge of trying to curb Russian gas imports by 2/3. The Biden administration says it wants to provide 50 billion cubic meters of additional LNG a year until at least the year 2030. But Russia typically supplies 40% of the EU's needs, equivalent to 155 BCM a year, mostly through pipelines, and about 15 BCM through shipments of liquefied natural gas. Well, another big problem for Europe is LNG storage, with only Spain believed to have spare storage capacity, but the country only has a limited pipeline connection to the rest of Europe. Well, US officials have said the supply will depend on commercial contracts, with much of America's LNG sales already committed elsewhere. Let's talk to Christof Ruehl, the senior research scholar at the Center on Global Energy Policy at Columbia University. Christof Ruehl, welcome. How much of a difference is this deal going to make? It's symbolic, isn't it?
Good evening. I think it's, I don't want to, no pun intended, it's a big deal. It is symbolic at the same time, and it's a big deal. Why is that? In the short term, 15 billion is, as you said, stretching US export capacity. So in order to get this done, if they're really serious for this year, for example, it would involve a political bargain with import countries in Asia, countries like Japan, Korea. So to tell them, yes, we know you have contracted so and so much LNG, but we ask you to release it and to give up on these contracts so that we can ship it to Europe and to use coal instead. That can be done, and it probably will be done, but it is a symbol for the unity of this front. It's not. And in the long term, you probably also have heard the announcements from Germany, which consumes the lion's share of gas in Europe. They want to wean themselves off from Russian imports, which are more than half the German consumption, by the year 2024. That is really lightning speed for energy markets, where everything takes time because the infrastructure is huge and clumsy and heavy. And it requires installing more regasification stations, a huge infrastructure attempt. So if that all happens, then we will see some really serious reorientation of gas flows in Europe. On top of that, but something worth keeping in mind, is that the gas which goes from Russia to Europe is produced in Western Siberia. There's no pipeline from Western Siberia across Siberia into Eastern Siberia and Asia. So that gas, which doesn't go to Europe anymore, cannot be redirected. It's going to be stranded in Russia and will be a write-off for them.
Russian gas flowed into Europe even during the height of the Cold War. So give us some historical context, if you would. How significant is this step?
If I may put some personal perspective on this, I happen to be German. For people of my generation and around and so, it was always part of the givens, two things in Germany. Number one, there won't be another war, so why really take the army and all that seriously? And not very close to that, number two or three probably, was that whatever the politics say, the gas supplies from Russia and the oil supplies, by the way, will be there. They're reliable. It's business. It's unaffected. All through the Cold War, all through the years of the Soviet Union, there wasn't a single disruptions of these supplies, no matter what else happened in the world. This is gone. This discretionary step, of attacking the Ukraine caused the Germans to pivot immediately, and sort of we have an extra budget of 100 billion to shore up our army. And now this, it causes a green socialist coalition in Germany to really sort of pivot towards fossil fuels, make more gas stations, more LNG, no less, in order to get Germany wean them off from Russian gas rather than concentrating on renewables or anything like that. As I said, at lightning speed. These are big things for the long term. And they are really sort of reflecting a political rift which is of a big character and rare.
Ukraine has obviously crowded out the news coverage of the climate crisis, the other big global story which we've temporarily forgotten about. Let me ask you about, will this speed up or impede the world's transition to a green energy economy?
In my book, it will impede the transition. Because what we are learning now is something which some economists have said for a long time. Just the transition is not easy. It's going to be very complicated. The share of clean fuels is very small still. It's not just replacing the dirty one with the clean one. There has to be a lot of complementarities working together. What we are seeing now is that without energy security, meaning the availability and the affordability of energy for heating your home and driving your car, there will be no energy transition. People will just go on the street and they will not be able to finance it. And their priority is that the lights go on. And without fossil fuels, and that's what we have learned, there will be no energy security in that sense. So for now, as I said, with the green government, even in Germany, so we see a pivot towards securing a secure infrastructure of fuels which is available tomorrow, and that have to be fossil fuels because, as you know, sometimes the wind doesn't blow, the sun doesn't shine, renewables cannot be transported across borders. That cannot be done with renewables currently, like it or not. And so I think it will throw us back a few years, not to mention the carbon emissions which will go up globally as a result of all this.
Christof Ruehl, good to get your expertise. Thank you very much indeed for coming on the programme. Christof Ruehl at Columbia University.